Thank you. Okay, people who attend my talks have to work. Okay, you don't come here just to sit back and relax. So, can anybody give me a one-liner definition for basic research, which is also called fundamental research? Can anybody in the audience tell me what basic research is, or fundamental research? Any offers? A sort of a one-liner.
It's research without any immediate target.
Okay.
Or expectation.
Okay, so it's basically curiosity-driven research. Okay, curiosity-driven research. Now, most of you may or may not know that 4 million animal experiments conducted in the UK in 2013. 25% of those experiments were basic research experiments. Okay? That's the largest single category. I just want to give you an official definition of what basic research is. Okay, basic research is experimental or theoretical work undertaken primarily to acquire new knowledge of the underlying foundations of phenomena and observable facts without any particular application or use in view. Okay, basic research is experimental or theoretical work without any particular application or use in view. And I sit on an ethics committee today, an animal ethics committee in Switzerland, because they won't let me on an animal ethics committee in the UK. They consider me a troublemaker. And I can tell you that it's extremely frustrating as a member of the animal rights community sitting on an animal ethics committee to be powerless when an animal researcher says, this is my experiment. I want to see what happens when I put an aggressive mouse in the same box as a timid mouse, and the aggressive mouse repeatedly attacks the timid mouse. And this is my study. It's pure fundamental research. It doesn't have any application to human or veterinary medicine. But hey, I've ticked all the boxes. And you know what? I've looked for an alternative and I can find no alternative. Well, it's true. There is no alternative to basic research. If your aim is to see what an aggressive mouse does to a timid mouse, or if your aim is to put a monkey in a primate chair and make that monkey press a lever every time he sees a light come on, because you want to see which part of the brain is active when he presses the lever. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot do that in cell culture. Okay? So let's understand this as an animal rights community, that there are virtually no alternatives. There is no alternative to fundamental research. So we have to try a different approach. We can't start saying, let's fund alternatives to replace basic research. That's a non-starter, folks. That's a non-starter. It's not going to happen. Okay? So to repeat what I said, 25%, 1/4 of all the animal research in the UK last year was fundamental research. But it gets worse than that, because almost 2 million of the animals out of that 4 million total are GM animals, genetically modified animals, mostly mice. Now, most GM animals end up as being surplus to requirements. They're going to be killed anyway, because either they're not enough GM, they're not sufficiently GM, okay, they don't match the criteria of what that researcher wants in that GM animal. So they are surplus to requirements, they're going to get killed. So we have to take the 1 million animal experiments used in basic research, add the 2 million which were bred as GM animals, you then get 3 million. So 3 million out of 4 million, which is 3/4 of all the animal research in the UK, is basic research. So we can't keep barking up the tree and calling for alternatives. That's not the right strategy. Okay, we have been duped for a long, long time, because we as an animal rights community didn't know what fundamental research was, nor does, of course, the general public. Most people, fundamental research is something amorphous, something out there. We don't know what fundamental research is. Now, today, we do know what it is. Okay, it's curiosity-driven research with no claim to applicability. You don't even have to get a result. It's enough that you saw what the mouse did to the mouse, or the monkey did pressing the levers. You've got your data. You publish a paper. Brilliant. And you can build your career on that 10, 20, 30 years. And a lot of university professors have built their careers on this sort of research. Okay, who's funding this research? Well, you and I are, okay, through our tax money. For example, the Medical Research Council last year distributed £900 million to research. So that's nearly £1 billion, largely of our taxpayers' money, to animal researchers, largely basic research. Let me read to you what the mission statement of the, if I can find it. Okay, this is the mission statement of the Medical Research Council. The heart of our mission is to improve human health through world-class medical research. To achieve this, we support research across the biomedical spectrum, from fundamental lab-based science, Okay, so you get the picture. Okay, the Medical Research Council is largely funding basic research, which is, professors in universities doing the same thing to animals, very cruel animal experiments, by the way, and getting publications out of this. So we are funding it. So apart from the Medical Research Council, which is our tax money, how else do basic researchers get money? Well, they get it from public donations. The biggest culprit, of course, is Cancer Research UK, okay, which distributes, whose budget is about £500 million a year. Mostly rodents, okay, it's mostly mice. Obviously, people care less about mice than dogs, so it's not an easy sell to the public. But fortunately, organizations like Animal Aid have produced this little booklet. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's got the list of the 60 animal medical charities in the UK that fund animal experiments and the 80 that don't. So the four worst ones, in terms of the amount of money that they put into funding, supporting animal research, is Cancer Research UK, the British Heart Foundation, I think it's called the British Heartless Foundation, and Alzheimer's and the Parkinson's Society. Okay, so those are the four worst actors, the four bad actors. So if you don't want your money to fund basic research, do not donate to medical charities that support animal research. That's point number one. Point number two, somehow we, the public, need to get onto these panels that distribute funding to animal research and onto animal ethics committees. Not easy. We also need to make our MPs aware of the fact that we as a public are not happy with our tax money being spent on curiosity-driven research. Now, the science and public opinion are against basic research, and I will back up my argument. So let's take public opinion. The European Commission in 2006 published a survey where they questioned over 40,000 members of the EU. Okay, so that was a very expensive survey, which we probably funded. Okay, but what came out of that survey, which is very good for us, is that they said to the public, the EU citizens, are you happy for your money to be spent on basic research, on curiosity-driven research? And 70% said no. So here we have a very, very nice survey, funded not by the animal rights community, but by the European Commission, which says that 70%, a clear majority of EU citizens, are opposed to basic research. And so, for heaven's sake, how can we translate this public opinion into political action? Okay, because that's where the problem lies. Okay, we are funding with our tax money these horrible experiments. At the same time that 70% of us are saying we don't want to fund them. So this is the disconnect. So we talked about how we can cut back or make life difficult for animal researchers, A, by not funding medical charities that fund animal experimentation, and B, trying to get into the system. Again, it's not easy because the Medical Research Council talks about public participation and public accountability, but all it is that they will invite you to a session where you can fill in a form and say what you think of this animal research, and they will say, very interesting, and then it goes onto a shelf. That's it. They don't really take us very seriously. So we need to find a way to have genuine public representation on these, animal ethics committees, but also these panels that distribute funding to animal researchers. Okay, and the other point I wanted to make was that the science is on our side. Okay, so animal researchers, somebody who wants to do basic research in order to get funding, has to somehow justify it. I mean, if they say, I want to, study mice, aggressive mice, what an aggressive mouse will do to a timid mouse, they won't get funding for that. But at the bottom line of their application, of their funding application, they will say, and this may help find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Then they get the funding. If they cannot justify it, if they cannot put a line in there to connect the dots between what they are doing and human health, they won't get a penny. So that's what they do. So they cheat. Because basic research says you're not making any claim to applicability. This is just blue skies research. Okay? But they cheat. Because at the bottom of the application they say, and this will find a cure for Parkinson's, cancer, you name it. You just fill in the space. Basically a blank check. When I say the science is on our side, all the reviews that have looked at claims of animal researchers, basic research, saying this is going to lead to a medical breakthrough, this is going to save human lives, well, actually, it don't. All the science shows that the chances of finding some great medical discovery for humans, to save human lives, based on basic research, is around zero. Okay? So there are other ways of doing it. There are more efficient ways of doing it. And this has been going on, this sacred cow, and with apologies to cows, okay? But this sacred cow has been perpetuated for decades. And my job here today is to make you aware, as the animal rights community, as the people who hold the banners, as the people who lead the community, society, calling for animal rights, calling for a stop to vivisection. We need to be educated. We need to know what's going on. It took me a hell of a long time to work this out. So I'm giving you in 30 minutes what I learned in 30 years. All right? But that's cool. So that's the state of the art. Okay, that's the state of play. So we've got a few minutes. I mean, if you want to ask me questions, please do so, because I think it's as important to hear your thoughts and comments as it is for you to hear me. So I've basically, hopefully, made you aware today, educated you today on what basic research is. It is awful. It is terrible. It is 75% of medical research in the UK. Okay, whereas most people think most animal experiments is life-saving stuff or it's toxicology. No, it's not, folks. It's basic research. In this or that guise, okay, either under the guise of cancer research or under the guise of heart research or under the guise of, you name it, drug addiction, you name it. Sir?
I would agree with you more. I'd say you're 100% right. It's all a load of rubbish. Because basically, Asperger's, which is not a mental illness, it's some kind of communication disability. A friend of mine said, he read his Simon's brother that they're trying to bring out tablets for Asperger's. I'll think this up 1,000,000%. No way, I'm not going to. I mean, it's all nonsense.
I think the public are so much more aware of the horrific side effects of so many tablets and things like that, aren't they? I mean, I'm in medical profession, so there's so many side effects. I mean, I do feel that the public is much more openly receptive to being educated. Do you? I really do.
In my experience, and I've done a lot of campaigning over the years, I find it's a toughie. A lot of animal rights people don't want to address the issue of vivisection because they don't know the argument. I recently did a British Heart Foundation protest. I put it out on Facebook. I had 3 people turn up. and as I suspect, it's because people don't know the issue. They don't want to face the public and argue the pros and cons of animal research because they don't educate themselves. And I'm talking to the animal rights community. I'm not talking about Joe Dog on the street. I'm talking about people. They're scared. In my experience, animal rights people are scared to tackle issues. Talk about veganism, vegetarianism, they'll go with that. Talk about pet trade, talk about racing, they'll go with that. But vivisection, it's a hard one, and many people just don't want to do it. They don't want to talk about it because they don't understand the issues. They want to make it complicated science. I keep it very basic. Morally, it's unacceptable, as well as scientifically. It's broad.
Yes. So the fight against vivisection will be won on the moral and the scientific argument, not either one on its own. Either one on its own, I think, would take 500 years. Both together, hopefully in our own lifetime, we will see this end. But I tell people who do demos, who do info stalls, basically, people will ask you the same 5 questions. You know, if we didn't have animal testing, we wouldn't have, penicillin, cancer drugs, blah, blah. It's the same, more or less the same 5 questions. So I've written a sort of a Q&A, so answers to those 5 questions. And the 6th question is, you're not a scientist. Okay, you don't know what you're talking about, why should I believe you? So in answer to that question, you say, okay, but we have scientific consultants, we have scientific people in the animal rights movement. If, sir, madam, you are serious, give me your email address, and I assure you that within a week we will give you an answer to your question. Most people will then turn away and walk away. But if they are serious, and this person may be a researcher or a doctor or whatever, so you really can't, you haven't got the competence to challenge them or to deal with them. But take their email, you can send it to me, and I'm happy to answer these people because they're not very many. As I say, you can get away with knowing those 5 answers. Okay, so 90% of the time, you will have an answer to those questions because it's the same 5 questions. And for that awkward 6th question, you don't have to say to them, try and wiggle your way out if you don't know the science. But today, the animal rights movement today is in a far more powerful position than it was 20 years ago because the science is more and more on our side. Even the British Medical Journal is coming out, as somebody mentioned here a couple of months ago, the British Medical Journal editorial started putting a question mark over animal experimentation. So we've never been in such a strong position, and it's going to get stronger. It's going to get stronger all the time. You had a question.
Well, I was just going to say, in Cambridge, one of the status of vivisection, we have in the past been a bit worried, but we don't care now, we just do it. But have you got your Q&As on your website, by the way? You can print those off and just hand them out.
One of the things that we were planning on doing with AVC when we actually get round to it is providing within the stall kits a real good Q&A leaflet that will really help people answer those questions.
I will give it to you, and you put it on the AVC website.
Yeah, and we can make that for download, and we can send it to people.
Then it saves a lot of talking.
Yeah.
Because we still get it, and our approach is probably to say, well, my mother had breast cancer, and she's all right now. Joan's approach is always to say, well, I'm so pleased. I'm really pleased for you, and then get dialogue with them. It's the researchers who've got a lot in Cambridge, obviously. They're the ones that are more difficult to challenge, but we don't have many of those at the moment.
But what you will notice is again that the animal researchers want to keep this debate as superficial as possible. They do not want a serious scientific debate because they are terrified. They are terrified they will lose. And I can't tell you how difficult it is to get into universities for a debate. I mean, no animal researcher wants a debate in front of their own students in the safety of their own university. So,
what's the relationship between degenerative diseases and meat eating in statistical terms, if you have any? Are vegetarians or vegan diets historically less prone, as in the Ayurvedic and Tibetan Chinese systems, less prone to degenerative and caustic disease than the Western diet, which is like creating an inbred academia for a degenerate carnivorism? Is there a relationship statistically between those two groups?
I don't know if such a study exists.
Do we need to test an animal to find out?
Certainly not, because we are all different. We are all different here. So, I always say that you can blame about 5% of your disease problems on your genes. That's it, between 5 and 10%. 90% is your environment and your lifestyle. So today, thanks to the science of epigenetics, you can't even blame your bad genes anymore because you can actually modify your bad genes through your lifestyle. So, there's no excuse anymore. We are pretty much the masters of our own fate when it comes to health and prevention. Okay, we're talking about preventing degenerative diseases, etc., etc. Prevention, which is, of course, almost a dirty word in the pharmaceutical industry and Western medical circles, etc. So, yes.
Curious about this basic research. I mean, given so much money goes into it, do the sponsors of this, do they not want some kind of cost-benefit analysis or just understanding of what they're getting out of it?
Excellent question. So we're hearing here, is there no cost-benefit analysis? Well, according to the Home Office, you can't really do a cost-benefit analysis because you're comparing apples and oranges.
I still get side effects.
How do you measure animal suffering against some purported future benefit to humankind? You cannot. It's almost impossible to do a cost-benefit analysis. But the point is, and this also refers to your question, for every pound that an animal researcher gets for his researcher, his institution usually gets another pound for admin costs. So universities absolutely love research grants. They love them because they know that they're going to get a pound for every pound that the researcher gets. So if a researcher gets £200,000, and this is not a wild figure, by the way, okay, this is a realistic figure. For 4 years, doing research on mice, a researcher will get a nice £200,000 donation grant, and some of that will go to their admin. So it's a win-win situation for the university and for the researcher. So no university is going to turn down basic research grants. For them, it's an important part of the income.
So I didn't mean just the animal suffering because I know it's hard to quantify people value it, but just generally in terms of the money as to how it's helping the human health. I mean, how do they do this?
Okay, so we are now 2014. Only now has the new legislation, which is the new European directives, which oversees animal experimentation. Only now has it come up with a concept of retrospective analysis. Only now, 2014, and it only applies to experiments done sort of last year. You can't take them back. There's none of that. So and I'm sure that's just an academic exercise. I'm sure they're going to just make us run around in circles. So they're pretty much keeping the status quo as it is. There was another question somewhere. Sir.
I'm thinking of the politics of it. At the moment, the Home Office Minister who supervises this subject is Norman Baker,
yes.
who has a traditional anti-vivisection.
Yes.
He's probably the best person we've ever had
yes.
in that office. Yes. Do you think he's in a position to make any difference? He's certainly sincere, I would say.
He's in a position to ask embarrassing PQs in Parliament. He's in a position to do certain things. I think he knows where the red lines are. But as we speak, he is being approached. Yes, we're certainly going to try and make as much, get as much goodness out of Norman Baker as we possibly can. But he knows the limitations.
Yes.
His secrecy, his secrecy conversation, his secrecy tour. Where are we at with that now? Because I can't find any more news on what he's decided.
I'm not up to date on that. Are you up to date on that?
Yeah, it was only that the last news from last week, wasn't it? That he has said he's going to try and put new legislation through before next year's election in May. But we don't know yet the results of the consultation. I think that'll be big news when it comes out, and I should think a lot of people will be talking about it.
Sir.
Does animal research go on at every university, or is it just those that teach medicine, say?
Well, no, you don't have to teach medicine. You can teach science, biology, zoology, all of those things. I would say that 90% of all animal experiments at universities are basic research. So the universities, they excel, in inverted commas, when it comes to basic research.
So students could at least take that into consideration when they make their applications?
I would say that the system weeds out compassionate students because, students who see what the curriculum is and whose lecturers won't let them, get out of it, normally won't do that sort of thing. And I find it very, very challenging for students who have chosen to go down the path of animal experimentation, even first-year students, because to them, their lecturer is God. And how dare I challenge what their learned professor is telling them? So once a student has decided to go down that path, it's not easy to change their views. Okay, thanks very much.
Oh, thank you.